What's going on, guys? Darby here, and today I'm bringing to you a new recipe that we've been developing for quite some time, developed in collaboration with Lynn South, who I'm going to be working with inside of this demonstration video of how to use the recipe to develop an outline for her second book in a series that she's working on right now. So if you want access to the recipe, just go to the aiauthor.com and subscribe. It'll be inside of our library of resources. And make sure you subscribe here on YouTube as well so that you get notified whenever we do new trainings, new videos, new spotlights on our community members. And until then, sit back, relax, and enjoy the recipe. Hey, what's going on, guys? Darby here with AI Author. And today I'm joined by Sheri South, who has been hard at work. She's a fiction writer, hard at work working on a Save the Cat recipe. Now, Save the Cat's a cool kind of like a beat sheet process to help give a really high level overview of what's a story going to look like: short stories, novels, novellas, things of that nature. And so we're going to be kind of exploring how can we use Save the Cat paired with Jasper in developing kind of, I guess, an outline or an overview about book two that you kind of have in the works right now, Sheri. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us this recipe. And why don't you just give us a little bit of background about you? How do you get into writing? Kind of what's some of your history with books and what we're going to be working on today.
Perfect. Great. Thanks for inviting me on, Darby. I appreciate it. How did I get into writing? I've been a writer pretty much my whole life, from the time I was a kid, and kind of been in and out of it for a while. I really rededicated myself to the craft about 10 years ago. I got some really lovely rejection letters on my first book, which was a science fiction, time travel, kind of light sci-fi adventure, from some really lovely literary agents, and decided, maybe self-publishing, indie publishing is something for me, because I like the degree of control that I have around it. So I published my first book in 2020, and working on kind of book two and some other projects with a small publisher at the moment. I write under the pen name Lynn South, Lyn, Lynn's my middle name. And I fell into Jasper last year and realized that it was a great brainstorming tool to come up with different ideas and to just kind of get my brainstorming juices going. I'm also an editor and a book coach, and somebody who does brainstorming with other authors on a regular basis. So using this tool, Jasper, to kickstart my own idea process has really kind of fed into getting a little sharper with my fiction writing, a little faster. The other day I wrote 4,000 words in about 2 hours with Jasper, and they were pretty good words. I mean, for fiction writers, it's a little harder to kind of get Jasper to do what we want, but it's fun too. It's really exciting to kind of see what he can do with material that you give him. So one of the things that I joke with all of my writer friends about is that I am a course and a tool and a writing craft book junkie. If it's out there, I'm probably going to buy it. But this was probably one of my smarter purchases in the last couple of years. One of the tools I use pretty regularly is the Save the Cat beat sheet, which sets up the emotional and action beats throughout the story at a macro level, not really at a micro kind of chapter level yet, but it just really helps to get on paper, so to speak, the structure of a story, so that you can then delve into the details and get an idea for what direction you want the story to go through, what you don't want to write. So it's been a real adventure so far, and I'm looking forward to the rest of it. And when Darby and I first started talking about the Save the Cat, I said, the hero's journey is a great story structure for a lot of stories, but it doesn't fit everything. And the Save the Cat, which this particular recipe also has, it's kind of a hybrid from some other elements. I use the free structure that author Jamie Gold has on her website for the outline for this recipe, and tweaked it and just kind of went through and rewrote some of the different commands that I thought might work with Jasper, but it is definitely a work in progress. And I'm looking forward to kind of working through and making sure that we can get this refined to the point where it will help other fiction authors get a jump start on their writing so that they can get to the meat of their story a little faster, which is kind of the purpose, I think, of brainstorming. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I played around with the tool for a few kind of story beats as well. And I thought it worked great for having a very limited knowledge of like this type of like writing and outlining. And so I'm really looking forward to diving in kind of blank slate right now with you on what we were talking about. You had the book one, right? It was just the time travel thief.
Yeah.
Give us a little context of that, because we're going to be working on book two. And so this is kind of the precursor. Real quick, before we get into, people do want to connect with you as an author online in general. Just where can people go find you just before we dive in and get into that?
Yeah, people can find me at Lynn South, Lyn South, like the direction.com. That's my main website. I have a few other websites for my you'll find my book coaching stuff on there. You'll find information about my books and upcoming product or upcoming books that I have coming out. And there's also a link to another business for brainstorming with other authors. So there's lots of stuff out there. lynsouth.com, Lynn with one N. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. Give me the real quick overview of book one, and then we'll jump right into this recipe and start working on book two.
Yeah, so book one kind of started with the idea of what would happen if certain key parts or fixed points in history were changed. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, so I love anything kind of time travel and timey-wimey and all that stuff. And I had this idea: what if there was a time traveling thief who got sucked into some intrigue in the past? When I was watching The Tudors, Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn and all that, thought what would happen if Elizabeth I were never born? That's really kind of where it started, because she was really instrumental in helping England to be the world's first superpower. What would happen if she suddenly weren't born? So my time traveling thief is actually used by some nefarious bad guys in the future, kind of this corporate conglomerate cabal kind of thing, to change history so that they can consolidate their power in the future. So she goes back in time, somehow messes with the timeline. Elizabeth I isn't born, and then she has to go back and fix it. So that's book one. But the end game for these people is to ultimately change a major point in history so that the winners of the victors in World War II are very different than what our history tells us happened, what we know happened in those years. So book two is fully set in pre-war France, right before the resistance starts. And basically, Clémence Arsenault, who's my main character, and her love interest, who is the pilot of her time travel ship, get embroiled in some really nasty stuff with the bad guys of that era, who are seeking to just run over the world, and they have to stop them from winning the war. So that's book two. Book three will be the culmination, but for our purposes, all I know is that there's this big conflict. It's set in World War II, pre-war, and going into World War II France. Probably also will be in UK and throughout the rest of Europe, but that's really high level for the purpose of our demonstration. Mm-hmm. That's the context of what we are structuring for this demonstration.
Absolutely. And that's where Jasper is going to come in, because here we go, about to brainstorm and see what the AI can help us come up with, and see where kind of get those creative juices flowing. So I just popped open the recipe. I made a few little tweaks just for my own context and how I like to work inside of boss mode. But as we teach here at the cookbook and inside of our academy, it all really boils down to how like clear and concise can you get that content description to give Jasper the most context, and then apply into the rest of it. And we've got all these commands right now that we're going to be running. And so I guess like basically like the what of what we're talking about here is like how would you describe the what of this in just a sentence or two in your own words?
The what of this, basically high level concept, and this is where I get stuck with Jasper too, is knowing exactly what kind of content to put in this description box to get the best content out. So this is, I'm sure everybody who's working on a fiction story kind of has run up against this as well. So the high level concept is a time traveling thief
Cool.
must stop the Nazis from winning World War II. That is the macro level.
Well, yeah, and let's keep it high level on like it's not to get too much into the weeds here because we want to see where this story could go. And so I'm going to write down, just so like as people are watching this, I'd start by kind of answering these questions in order over here, and then I'm going to trim them down and plot them over to the content brief. And one thing I noticed whenever I was running it the first time is I had actually left the Save the Cat like in title, I think, when I was running it. And Jasper understood that I was like referencing Save the Cat. And so it started to prompt itself, which I found was really interesting. And so I want to start this by saying this is a high level overview for a beat sheet that follows the Save the Cat format. Because there is content out there about Save the Cat. Is that how you spell beat sheet?
I think it's 2 words.
Okay, beat sheet. Save the Cat's formats. So now because I just want to give this one sentence for Jasper to get that there. Now I'm going to say like the story follows a time traveling thief who must stop the Nazis from winning World War II. Right. So now we've got the what of it. So the where, I think you mentioned earlier, it was in France, right? So that's kind of like
Paris, London, Berlin.
Takes place in Paris, London, and Berlin. Why? I'm going to copy this over here as well, just so I can come back up and reference it later. Why does this matter? Is there any like big why behind this that is like altering the course of history? Obviously, it's World War II and Nazis, but
there is. So I think the high level that we could put here is bad guys in the future want to consolidate their power and their wealth hundreds of years in the future, and they're doing that by changing the past.
Perfect. So what I did just there is I use a tool called Voice In, just dictation. It's an app that you can get on Chrome. And so if I'm ever wanting to just speak directly into Jasper, Macs and PCs usually both have some sort of voice dictation built in. Why does this matter? It matters. This matters because bad guys in the future, want to do that. Being conscious of our word count over here, we got or character count, we got 398 characters out of 600. And so we got about 3 more prompts here, like who is involved? Do you know any of the characters directly involved with it? Or is it
I do actually, and in the chat, I'm going to pop in their names.
So we got Clemens Arsenault, Nico Garcia, Fagan Delacroix, Coco Chanel.
And there's sundry others in the.
There will be more, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna look up another name because she's kind of a big deal here. So those are kind of the main characters.
Okay, perfect.
But there is one other one. She's like a big bad. So hang on.
In terms of the concept of time, you said this was taking place just before World War II started.
Yeah, it starts in like 1938, 1939 in Paris, before the
1980,
fall of,
1939.
yeah, it's like 1939, right before the fall of Paris. But then it follows through for a few years, kind of into the war. And it really jumps around a lot because it's time travel. You know, they
Right.
can
Yeah.
jump in and out of different points. So, and it comes from a future where time travel is a known commodity. It's highly regulated.
Okay.
There are uses for time travel, and heist, pulling off heists is not one of them. So she's on kind of the outside of the law for all of this.
Okay. So I'm just going to add in the story can jump around to some different years, but I'm just going to kind of tighten this up now, save a few words. We're right at the end of that 600 characters in this content brief. And travelers, all right, cool. 599 characters out of the 600. Let's start with this and see where it kind of takes us. Maybe just something as a placeholder, like time traveling thieves or something, just for some context there.
Yeah.
What's the first book called?
The name of the book is,
or if you have a name already.
Thieves. It's just called Thieves. Yeah.
All right, so it'll go
Time Travel Adventure is the subtitle.
And is there like a tone that you've used in the past, or like someone that you want a tone of voice, celebrity, or just, you know, witty, serious, funny, comical, historical?
Let's see. I've used thriller
Thriller, okay.
in here. Action, but I'm not sure that's kind of where it.
Let's try like thriller and action.
One. Dramatic, and sometimes it's depending on if there's some humor in there, I might make it a little use funny or something along those lines.
Cool. We'll see. So sometimes I get little mixed results from moving multiple tones of voice. Sometimes it works out well, and sometimes it just like want to tweak with it. So the table is set now. And so as we find tones of voices that we really like, we want to document that, I'll just add those in back up here. But you know, usually by the end of the recipe, that way we can go back and know like, hey, this was the title we used. This was the content brief. This was the tone. And if we had any keywords, then we'd want to add those in here too. We're not doing any sort of like blog posting right now. And so
there's the other characters, by the way, Becca.
Okay, perfect. So we got one more character. I'll go ahead and add them in.
Yeah, she's the bad guy in book one, and she's one of the bad guys in book two.
Okay, so I'll just do this, is the bad guy. We'll see. So we're starting right here. This is kind of like following an order that beat sheet, right? The 15 like primary beats inside of a story, again, staying really high overview. And this is literally all we're starting with here on the left-hand side for thieves, time travel adventures. So I'm going to go ahead and primarily the commands that I'm going to be using here is going to be Command Shift Enter. That way I keep the beats and I know what was the prompt that gave me this output. And I'm going to do Control or Command, depending on PC or Mac. I'll do Compose for Control J, and then that'll just continue the conversation. But I'll start things off here, and let's see what we're working on. List of opening images or ideas for the story that sets the tone, mood, and type of scope for the story. All right. Let's see what we got here. One, time traveling thief jumps into a window into a lavish ballroom full of dancers in period dress. Clemens Arsenault, the protagonist, wakes up in the Parisian alleyway next to the dead body of her partner, Nico Garcia.
Yeah, that one's not happening. I'm not killing Nico off, at least not yet.
Cool. So yeah, so here's where we want to like start picking up, right? Like, all right, what are we going to cut out? And maybe you want to run this again. You want to, so 2 is kind of trashed.
2 is trashed. Yeah, Nico's sticking around for a while at least.
And this one stops, right? And so it's still, Jasper could still think a little bit if we just divot the continue, the compose button. And so that's what I'm going to do here and see if it pops into anything else, and we'll see where it comes out to. Becca Trevor, a wealthy businesswoman, is briefed by her henchman the plan to change the past. It looks like it's giving all of these characters some sort of opening scene. And Eiffel Tower lit up at night with Nazi flowers flying on top. Group of children playing the rubble bombed out in London. A newspaper proclaiming the Nazis have won the war. Interesting.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of Clemence picking a lock in a darkened alleyway. I want to know what's behind that door, kind of.
Okay, so which one is that? I'm trying to.
Either that or number 4, Becca.
Okay, so we got number 4 we like,
Mm-hmm.
and then we also like number 6. So I'm just going to highlight these so we can come back and reference them. Would you say that the rest are just kind of don't intrigue you to pursue down?
They don't intrigue me to pursue them just yet, and I think because we start in France, I know that much. Number 9 is probably the group of children playing in the rubble of a bombed out building in London. So this is before the war starts, so that's not an opening.
So why don't we do this? Let's cut some of these ones out. And the funny thing is like Jasper's already starting to give itself some prompts. It saw that, and now it's to choose one of the opening images and write a paragraph of what's happening to reveal the story. And so we could go down that rabbit hole, or we could say, Jasper, no, not right now. And let's go down the kind of scenes. If you're writing this from your perspective, do you like avoid getting into these descriptors first? And you want to just have a really high level overview initially?
I like the structure of having a high level overview first before I start delving into the detail.
Well, let's do this then. Just delete that one. Briefed, henchman, change the past. All right, if you had to choose 4 or 6, which one would you want to roll with?
I'd want to start with number 6, I think.
6, let's do it.
Because she's going after something. I want to see what she's going after.
Darkened alleyway, cool. So now choose one opening image, write a paragraph. I think we just said that, didn't we? Here, opening scene, opening images. Yeah, cool. Write a list of opening scene ideas. Yeah, okay, perfect. Cool, so now we're down here. We know it's talking about this. Write a list of opening scene ideas. Let me see. There's something I've experimented with when I say write a list is if I want to like really like create a bunch of lists, I'll just go write a list of like 27 opening scene ideas, and then it really starts to feed it. So
yeah, I do that too. Otherwise, it'll stop at like 9.
Yeah, so like
try to rerun it without changing that prompt. Then it says, nope, I've done enough, I think.
So now we got like opening scene ideas. Now, where does like the opening scene versus like the opening image? It's just like a snapshot, like, oh, okay, like real quick, and then it goes into the scene.
Yeah, it is, because basically what the Save the Cat does is some of these prompts overlap, especially in the beginning, like setting the scene with the image. What is the opening scene? What's the structure? What's basically kind of the plot of the first scene? What's the theme of that kind of somebody else kind of states that you follow through the story, and the inciting incident? Things like those can happen concurrently or within a very short period of time, usually within 1 to 15 or 20 pages, based on the pace of your story, basically.
So maybe if we're looking at the Clemens, picking a lock in a darkened alleyway, one of these could tie in, maybe she's being chased in the street. I'm just trying to read through some of these prompts because it's is in prison trying to escape. The villain is making a plan to change the past, are marching through the streets, how to break into the bank.
Yeah, I think it's kind of Clemence is breaking into something. That's the scene based on that previous prompt. So she's trying, she could be on a job for a client. Basically, she's the girl you go to if you're living in the future where time travel is, everybody knows about time travel, and maybe some ancestor cut somebody out of a will and you want to change that. So you might engage her services to go back in time to do whatever she needs to do to fulfill the client's request. And they pay her very well for it. So that's basically, so if she's kind of picking a lock in a dark alley, she's going after something for nefarious or illegal purposes for a client.
So it's going to be nefarious and evil for a client.
Well, yeah, not necessarily nefarious, but certainly illegal. Maybe
Yeah.
not nefarious, but certainly, you're stealing something from someone. You're somewhere you should not be, Clemence, basically.
So I wonder if we wanted to like have that up here, we would say like she's doing nefarious things for a client that are surely illegal.
Mm-hmm.
For a little bit more context here. And then instead, because I'm seeing that it's the opening scene ideas, and like it's like, okay, do we want to talk about the opening scene related to this? Or do we want it? Because then Jasper's going to also give us like, these are all other potential opening scene ideas.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think that
based.
depends. For the purpose of this demonstration, let's kind of go with um, the context that you've added to the first prompt, or that she's doing something nefarious for a client, based on that to kind of narrow that focus. I think the list idea is great, and I use it all the time
Mhm.
to just generate possibilities.
Yeah.
And that might change the trajectory of the story, because Jasper might come up with something really better, really cool.
Yeah, but a good note though, that like you're still in here and you're directing it, right? Because if you're not really steering, especially with something is like there's endless possibilities with a fiction story.
You can get lost in a loop of possibilities
Yep.
for days. And it's great if you're just poking around and seeing what interests you. If you are really sitting down to write a story, putting that context for Jasper, I found obviously is really important, just as it is with any other task that, in the writing blog posts, for example, or copy for a client, you've got to provide the context. Otherwise, Jasper's going to make up some really interesting things for you, and they get really fun sometimes. But you definitely, with fiction especially, want to give clear context, and that's kind of where I struggle. So this is great to kind of see this.
So like even just that, right, directed it like a lot better, because you're just saying, hey, go above. It's not referencing all of the different characters at once. It's still like revolving around Clemence. And so like opening scene, she's nefarious things that for a client, they're surely illegal. Maybe they're caught stealing by a rival gang when she's rescued by Nico Garcia, stealing from the family. Go a lot of ways here. It'll stop bombing, guessing it tries to stop a bombing.
Yeah, I think there was one up toward the top that she's trying to steal something for a family.
She's breaking into a safe, rival gang, steal from his family business.
Yeah, so I think maybe that second one, except they already know each other, so it's the only thing that's different.
Cool. So maybe we would just modify that a little bit. So just go ahead and get rid of all of these, because, again, endless ideas. Meet again as she's trying to steal from his family business instead of for the first time. Meet again as she's trying to steal from his family business. So now it's like, okay, cool. We've got that idea. And now we want to write a list of themes that the secondary character poses a question or a statement to the main character that is the theme of this book. And this might be where we want to like really get specific with Jasper, is like write a list of themes where Nico poses a question or statement to Clemence, right? Something like that. Like Nico poses a question or statement to
Clemence,
Clemence,
yeah, there's an accent I didn't put in there, but okay, no worries.
Clemence, that is the theme of the book. So I wonder how it's going to say like list of themes. The theme of this book is X. The theme of this book is how far, so it's saying like this is the theme of the book, is like how do we define, or how far would you go to protect the ones you love? And so what is justice? What is the cost of war? Can love conquer all?
Yeah, I think one of the themes from the first book was very rich in terms of she was on a revenge quest. So the theme of the first book was, can you pursue revenge and not damage your relationships? And she found that she couldn't. So she had to let go of one or the other. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but that kind of leads into kind of the possibilities for, I like number 10.
Yeah, are we powerless against fate? That's a good theme. Want to roll with that one?
Yeah, let's do that one. I like that one the best of all.
So I'm gonna say like the theme of this book is, are we powerless against fate? Now, Nico questions the reader wants to answer, or an itch that needs to be scratched.
Yeah, so the itch that needs to be scratched is really kind of leading into that inciting incident that happens next. So it's either a question the reader wants answered, like the answer to that question, are we powerless against fate? So, for example, creating a situation where if Clemence if she gets to the other side of that locked door, is she going to find something in there that makes her feel powerless against the tide that's kind of coming in terms of history? Or is it an itch that needs to be scratched? What is the need? What are the needs of the character? What does Clemence need? What does Nico need? What does because all of the characters have different needs. Clemence does, Nico does, Fagin, and certainly Becca Trevor has an agenda. So she has a very definite need as the representative of the big bad guys.
So I just added in a little bit more there, because you get about 200 characters, right, to run these commands if you want to execute the full command. So like, what are the needs of Clemence, Nico, Fagin, Coco, Becca? It's like, why are they trying to steal from Nico? Like, what is the Nazis' plan, and how will Clemence stop them? Who is Becca Trevor, and why is she the bad guy?
Okay, yeah. So number 1, I'm thinking right now, Clemence isn't stealing from Nico, so that can go. But certainly number 2, number 5, definitely. I don't think number 3 is going to factor in this book, but certainly, if not for number 4, how does Coco Chanel kind of impact history, not just her fashion designs, but how does she as a person impact history? And for those of you watching, whether you knew this or not, Coco Chanel was actually part of involved with the Nazis during the occupation. She had relationships with a few people in the Nazi high command, and was also involved in 1 or 2 missions as a Nazi agent. So it's really interesting how, in her position of power and privilege, how she impacted history. And there's a really good book that I read in preparation for writing book 2.
Do we want to add her fashion design, or like her maybe?
I think let's just say, how will Coco Chanel impact history?
I like it.
Or history, or the
how history remember, or I guess we're already.
How it impacts the war, or the outcome of the war. Let's say that. How will Coco Chanel impact the outcome of the war? That might be better.
Yeah. How will Coco Chanel impact the output? So these are some good hooks. Do you like having multiple hooks for something like this, or do you like to kind of keep it down to one big main hook?
I generally like to have one hook. So at this point, I would probably make a decision of which is the stronger. And I think it's number 1. It's for me, it's definitely number 1. What's the Nazis' plans, and how are they going to stop them? Because that's really the question throughout the whole book. how are we following the leads to find what the bad guys are up to so we can stop them.
Yeah. I wonder with this next one, this was a completely prompted by Jasper, right? 5 scenes for the following. I'm not familiar with all, I guess like the All Is Lost, Dark Night of the Soul is maybe some variation of like where the heroes, like not hero's journey, but just like the, characters go through these different areas.
Yeah. And basically what this kind of, and others may have different perspectives on this, but these are different parts of the story structure that all the sum of these parts kind of add up to the whole story. Things like fun and games is like the point at which you can't keep throwing bad thing after bad thing after bad thing at the reader without giving them some sort of break. That's
Okay,
kind of where the levity kind of comes in, like something fun or something, funny that happens. And the midpoint, the bad guys close in, All Is Lost, and Dark Night of the Soul kind of lead up to, this is the trajectory of a story that goes from act 1, if you're talking about a typical 3-act structure, and following that trajectory, that arc of increasing the tension up to the point where you get the All Is Lost, Dark Night of the Soul, we're not going to win this. And then it kind of, you go into the climax and the denouement after that. So
maybe we don't go down this route just yet then,
Yeah, I think we can kind of leave it. Can we leave it there and come back to it? Or do we have to like cut it in order to?
I mean, we can totally leave it here. If we like.
I'm not sure how that impacts what Jasper does. I'm always kind of wary about cutting things because I don't want to lose them. But
yeah,
and a lot of times I will copy and paste into a blank Word document so I don't lose them, but I want to keep things cleaner on the interface. That's kind of an organizational.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. And like I'll often will have like either like Dabble or something like that open where I'll just put some of the scratch notes off to that side. Because I think if we leave it in here, then like Jasper will start to reference that we're like, might be getting too far ahead of itself, but it might not necessarily be a bad thing.
Right.
Sure. Because you see it's like keeps prompting itself here, climax, following, resolution. And so
I kind of have this idea like the climax is really, it's not going to be based in London. It's going to be based, I have this feeling, somewhere in Paris, whether it's they have to stop the Nazis from stopping D-Day or stop the Nazis from developing, what if they stop the Nazis from developing the atomic bomb before the Allies do? So that those are kinds of things that are kind of really, really high stakes, and it's still kind of set in London and gives them somewhere to go into book 3 because it's a trilogy. So kind of keeping in mind as we're working on this book, kind of thinking ahead in terms of what's the overall story arc for the entire series. If you have a series planned, those kinds of things will keep you from writing yourself into a corner that you have to write yourself out of later. And that's no fun. Ask me how I know.
I can imagine. So maybe we do leave these here. We just like copy and paste them up above a little bit and come back to it a little bit later, or I might actually just do it down just to do that. So let me remove that here.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I just kind of get it out of the way.
So we'll come down and visit this later. For that point, coming back up to top, we've got the story, the hooks. We added this in and we come to like, all right, this is the big hook. What's the Nazis' plan and how will they be stopped? Now we need the inciting incident, right? The catalyst that's going to kick everything off. Clemence is in the process of pickpocketing a man in a crowded bar when she's suddenly grabbed from behind. She expects to be turned over to the police, but instead of is handed a card with an address on it. She arrives, she's told by a man named, she already knows Fagin.
Yeah, and Fagin's a woman. Yeah, she already knows Fagin. So Fagin actually rescued Clemence from a life of servitude when she was a child in like 17 something New Orleans. So they've been together a long time. She's been a mentor for a long time.
Okay. This first part seemed a little bit unique. Pocketing in a bar. We could always chop this up. She's told by, like, we could even just get this down and then see where it goes. She's told by, like, who, right?
Yeah, she's already a time traveler. That's established. She's been training for it for a long time. She has a lot of missions under her belt. So
is this something that you'd want to maybe scrap and then go and try another
yeah, I think I would want to scrap it and go have another go.
Okay. Nazis change history and Clemence stop them. It's down the house of cards. She's trying to finish her lock picking. She's interrupted by a Nazi shoulder. He's looking for something. He's not going to leave without it.
That sounds interesting. But at this point, there's no Nazis in, although that could be really interesting because the Nazis have not yet, Paris has not yet fallen, but if there's a Nazi soldier already in Paris, what he's doing there, that could be really interesting.
This seems like it's reading the right storyline, or at least understands that Becca's the time traveler from the future.
I like that one because that could fit into like stealing an important document. What's the document? Could it be the D-Day plans? Could it be information or communique about the bomb that they're trying to build? That could work. That could work really well. Because I'm thinking of something big. What is it? Because this is like a big, grand scale kind of adventure thriller kind of story. The inciting incident in each of the books needs to be something pretty big. So I like the very important document part.
Well, now we've got Jasper writing us a book blurb.
You know, I really hate writing book blurbs because they're really hard to get right. If Jasper can do that for me, I am all over that.
Yeah, I think I would probably want to see get the whole thing out to the, that this is going to be like the overview of it, and then run a command at the end of the recipe and say, all right, now write a book blurb, write all my marketing, whatever for the book based on that. So it's a little bit more high level here, but it's kind of following the same. But Clemens on a mission to stop her and the bad guys from consolidating their power in the future. We said that over here in the content brief. It's a race against time to save the world.
True. Yes.
Almost kind of leads right into this next section. So now, like, the point of no return. The character makes a choice they can't turn back. Clemens and Nico. Has she met, or Clemence? They know Nico already.
Yeah, she knows Nico already.
Meet again. It's time in the middle of a heated gun battle. She's trying to steal from his family business. It's captured by the Nazis and threatened to torture. She doesn't give them the document.
Yeah.
Becca reveals her true identity. Tells Clarence, I just gotta stop saying the name.
Yeah, that's okay.
Clemence.
I like number 4, except I don't think it's Coco Chanel that helps Clemence escape.
Well, maybe
so
who
she
else?
steals the document. It's probably going to be it's either going to be Nico, or it's going to be some like bystander, some good Samaritan who is part of the resistance that helps her get away. But the inciting incident, because she hasn't stolen the document yet. So maybe this is one of those things where she attempts to steal this document and almost gets caught, maybe.
maybe we start with like and then see what Jasper does.
Yeah.
Attempting to, and she's caught in the act. She's faced with going to jail. Wait, did you say resistance?
I did say resistance.
But we didn't type that anywhere over here.
No, but I said maybe one of the characters who
That's cool.
liberates claimants from the Nazis or whoever's holding, or the police. That wouldn't be the Nazis at this point. They're not really in Paris yet before the fall.
Huh. That's cool how it references that.
Yeah.
Chooses to work for the resistance, and this choice sets her on her path, which she can't turn back. So now I guess she's caught in the act, and the resistance is kind of forcing her to, like, you're either going to work for us or we're going to send you to jail. And
yeah.
okay, so plot idea. I guess here we could kind of put thieves, time travel adventures, something along that line.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what book 2 title is yet.
Okay.
But we'll use that. It's kind of the placeholder.
The first plot point, sent on a mission to steal a very important document from the Nazis. However, she's not the only one who wants it. Becca from the future wants to stop at nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is kind of building on like all of these little points that we've established already. Is caught in the act. Here it's saying that she's sent on a mission by the resistance to steal this document.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's saying,
yeah, it says she's attempting. Well, there can be more than one attempt, because obviously the first attempt failed.
Okay, so she chooses to work for a path in which she can't turn back. So it's kind of repeating a little bit about what we just talked about up top.
Right.
Run that again. Jasper's being a little slow today. Task for stealing it. However, she's not the only one. I guess this is like this plot point being, this is like, maybe it makes sense for that being the first one.
Yeah, because like I said, this kind of overlaps.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the inciting incident is part of the plot for.
Yep. Okay. All right. So resistance. So we could either go on a second plot point, but for the sake of following like the beats to what we want, so generate more plot points that carry the story. No, the second one here was first plot point, and then write a subplot point to that one. And so
yeah, likely like a comedy, like a lighter.
Okay, that's a comedy element. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of that fun and games element we were talking
minutes ago. Poses as a Gestapo officer and tries to get closer to the Nazis to learn their plan.
He's not very good at it. He keeps getting caught. That would be kind of funny if it would be kind of deadly to get caught though by the Gestapo, I would think. But we'll go with this just for. I'm thinking he's got one shot with the Gestapo, and that's going to be it.
Yeah. So, and then like the romance element, and so see if we.
Oh yeah, there's history with Clemence and Nico. They are already in love, but she kind of is this really independent woman and has trust issues, so they butt heads all the time. But so they're already kind of in love.
Okay.
From book 1.
But it's kind of tying these two together already. Yeah. It's interesting. Undeniable attraction between them.
It is that. I have this running joke about Clemence, though, in the first book that whenever she's like trying to get out of a sticky spot, somehow she always winds up trapped in the toilet and can't get out for some reason.
Trapped in the toilet?
Yeah, trapped in 17th century chateau, and she's stuck in the room with the chamber pot because she's trying to steal something from someone, and they come back into the room and she's
Oh, okay, I got you.
and the characters are always like, let me guess, you're stuck in the toilet again.
I guess that could be like one of the comedy elements up here.
Yeah.
Do any of these sit?
Number 2, definitely not, because she's not stealing from his family business, but certainly keeping their romance a secret during wartime might work out well.
They're worried it will put them in danger.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like eventually publicly confess their love for each other. We're at a plot point with the characters have fun. Is this maybe where it was talking about the fun and games element? Is that kind of where something like this fits?
Yeah.
Go on a date in the movies.
Well, if we think about, being in Paris or in France specifically, so kind of thinking about what kinds of things people from the future who are time travels would be flummoxed by, or taken aback, something they're not used to, that they could, like, they're used to technology and they run up against something that's not technology and they can't figure out how to work it. Maybe that sort of thing might be kind of funny.
Let's see what this does.
Or maybe there's a dance and Clemence is a rotten dancer and she like steps on everybody's toes and like.
So like Clemence.
I kind of envision Clemence as kind of, did you ever see the movie is Sandra Bullock where she goes undercover at a beauty pageant? What's that?
Oh, Miss Congeniality.
Yeah, so she's like this really awkward kind of, no nonsense FBI agent. They put her in the worst possible situation, fashion and dresses and heels and being a, pageant life. That's kind of what I envision Clemence is in some of these high society, like, environments. She is not, she's a fish out of water.
Okay. Well, you said high society, and in order to get close, they're posing as a wealthy couple. It's kind of like,
yeah, that could be fun.
Maybe that one. They dance, drink, and fool with each other all night long.
Yeah.
And then she's terrible but endearing. They have a good time and laugh at her expense.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Yeah, so like a pinch point now, through a reminder of the story's antagonistic forces, directly visible to the reader. Imagine this is going to have something to do with Becca.
Yeah, there's got to be some sort of.
So she shows up.
Yeah.
Makes it clear to.
Because they all know each other from book 1. So if she shows up at this party, Nico and Clemence are going to know it right off.
Okay. False victory. She thinks she got the document, but it is a trap set by Becca.
That's a good one.
Becca has the document, is now one step ahead. Not making it easy. So write a list of new information or awareness ideas that change the experience, the catalyst activating a decision. So this is going to be like, we already know that Becca's a time traveler.
Yeah.
maybe, ooh, Becca Clemence has a power that she doesn't know about yet. The document they're stealing is a tool.
I like the document though. The document is a powerful tool that could change the course of history. It's either, I like the idea of it impacting D-Day, which was obviously a turning point in the war. Another turning point in the war is who develops the bomb first.
Okay.
It'd be one of those two. And I really like that kind of high stakes element to the story.
Maybe let's add that in because I think that's so. Let's do the D-Day one. So what we were saying.
Yeah, it's basically the plans for D-Day that the Nazis have gotten a hold of. Or maybe the Nazis are trying, yeah, hang on, let me think. Yeah, she has to steal the plans back or destroy the plans because the Allies are going to have to change their plans now because. And it could be just a simple confirmation. If she's, she's working for the resistance, she has to confirm whether they actually have that document or not. Maybe that's the issue. See, this is what I love about Jasper because it starts that
Yeah.
process of generating the ideas and seeing which ones you like. And it's kind of that springboard.
Yeah, it's not going to get mad if you tell it it's a bad idea.
I've had some writing partners who've done that. Yeah.
So this new idea is to regroup and send in heavy artillery. The main character's team begins to unravel. Bad guys have a secret weapon they're about to use. Team is outnumbered.
Ooh, I like someone in the main character's team betrays them. What if that's her? Oh, what if that's her mentor? What if it's Fagin? And what would cause Fagin to betray this girl who's been like a daughter to her for 10, 15 years?
So it's a good idea. So someone, the main character, betrays them. What if it was Fagin? I don't know if I just even running that. One of the people, team betrayer, maybe Fagin. No one knows, but sure, a possibility. Your team will be careful to watch their backs because the bad guys are starting to get desperate and do anything to win.
So we're thinking in the context of what Clemence is doing at this point, which is trying to get that document, whatever that document is, for D-Day or whatever.
Yeah.
Then that betrayal should probably, for the context of this, what if we set the context that she has to do something to either stop Clemence from fulfilling her mission, or she goes after the document herself.
Would that be the second pinch? Like right here, is that where this would come into play?
Could be. Yeah, that could be. So if she's going to betray, that would be a second pinch point because number one, it's going to come from a place Clemence is not expecting.
The resistance will never exist.
That's good context because that sets it up against the betrayal by Fagin somehow. But Fagin's going to have a really good reason why she's doing this. The Nazis are going to have something to hold over Fagin to get her to betray at this level, because she is not the type of person who's going to betray Clemence.
Let's see what Jasper says. They're threatening to hurt her family. They want to steal the document so they can use it for their own purposes.
Yeah, except the Nazis already have the document. So maybe it's the Nazis. Nazis are holding Fagin's family hostage and will kill him if she doesn't stop Clemence from stealing the document, perhaps.
Interesting. I almost wonder if this is like again, like kind of like staying on like the beats and like how deep do we really want to go here?
Yeah. Let's stay on the beats, like, because I think that's important, because otherwise,
Yeah, and we've only got a handful
yeah.
of commands to kind of like run back through, and I want to be aware of your time as well. And we're
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I was questioning, and I know you kind of went back and fine-tuned the recipe, but choosing the right action verb and the right command for the context that you're setting up for Jasper. Talk a little bit about how important that is for Jasper in general, but certainly as it relates to fiction, because as we've seen, Jasper comes up with lots of ideas, but kind of winnowing those down to what serves the story best.
yeah, and yeah, I mean, I think with that is like as you're going through each one of these sections, I mean, I guess like you could in theory go and like modify the content brief for every single beat if you wanted to get like really granular. But like the reason I like to play with the commands and like different sort of like adjectives and descriptors and just tweaking those particular commands is because I found that if you do it and you find the right sort of command that works with your content brief, you can reuse the same content brief for like a lot of the outline, which is kind of what we want. So we want to hit that same theme throughout. And so if I'm saying like generate a list of all his lost moment ideas, where it seems like all hope is lost, this is a lull before like the second point, you're going to get the resistance finds here. Trevor captures, Clemence, the Nazis have this, her team betrays her. And so these are like all his lost moments. But you see like this here, but like if I want it to be a little bit more particular, right? Again, you got about 200 characters here. I might say like of, emotional, all his lost moments.
For me, out of this one, the biggest one is Fagin. Clemence learns that Fagin has betrayed her and is working against her. That is.
Did I say that again? That was who?
Clemence learns Fagin has betrayed her with this document.
And so I've adding like the literal word context here so that Jasper recognizes that, okay, crap, it's a little bit over 2 words. This is the lull. Let's take out emotional.
Yeah.
And let's see, context to like kind of like add on to the commands. And so like if you're going through this and writing a story about like, whatever dogs and cats and saving them from the pound or something, you're going to want to direct like these sort of commands to say all his lost moments based on, a little bit more if you want to like really narrow the focus. Nazis of war, the one context.
That kind of comes later. I think that's not a.
Yeah, so
that's a big one, but the all is lost moment for this context, for this story, I think should be that betrayal, because that would knock Clemence for a loop. Sorry if you hear growling, that's my dog barking at squirrels. Sorry.
I'm gonna say again, betrays Clemence. Talk about the betrayal in detail. Working with the Nazis, document ready to launch on D-Day. How things could get worse. So I wonder here if it's pulling a little bit too much information from just in general, because there's a lot right now that it's hard. That's where in general with fiction and Jasper, it's like, how do you get it to follow the same idea like consistently? Right. And so I'm gonna add these blinders on here and see the team is about to be executed. The time machine is destroyed.
So maybe it's Fagin betrays Clemence, not necessarily leaving her to die, but she she leaves. She doesn't know whether she's going to die or not, because she's off to save her family. If her family's being held hostage, and she's delivered Clemence to Becca Trevor.
Betrays. Oh, so maybe that's it. Delivers and delivers her to Becca.
Mm-hmm.
It's captured by Becca, betrays, time machine destroyed. Fagin reveals.
Yeah, I think Fagin reveals she's been working with Becca all along. That's the betrayal, really.
That would be sharp.
Yeah.
Would hurt. Okay. Time travel, just general prompts. So what is, can you be like, the black moments is just at like the darkest night type of point, like all is lost?
Yeah, I think, let's see what Jasper says. I think I know, based on what we've said so far, what that would be, but let's see what Jasper says about, or is that a new prompt? Is that something
No,
Jasper did?
this was part of the this was part of what we had here.
This is part of the recipe. Okay.
Yeah.
So then
I
think I know what the big black moment is here, but I want to see what Jasper kind of says about it.
Betrayed by Pagan, delivered, captured by the Nazis, escapes but is recaptured.
So to me, this is where maybe some context around her relationship with Fagin is the something that has been lost, because she's a mentor, she's a mother figure to her. She is the only person that Clemence trusts. Well, she kind of trusts Nico, but definitely trusts Fagin more. So to have a betrayal there is going to be probably the darkest moment of her life since, for a long time. There are other dark moments, but this is going to be, that would be a big one.
Let me see. So the betrayal.
Yep. So the loss of her trust in Fagin, the loss of her relation. What's the relationship? What did it all mean? Did she completely, she doesn't know Fagin anymore, really, is the loss. She thought she knew her and she didn't. She doesn't. How could she do this?
Yeah, like what does it mean? How could she do this? Friend or ally reveals, trust is betrayed, captured and stranded. Sacrifice, good.
Yeah, so I think number 5 is the black moment here, the loss of Fagin as a loved one.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, second, I think this is it, right? Yeah, the second plot point now. Final injection of new information. The main character's quest is accelerated. Now we're talking about Hitler.
Yeah, that Clemence is, or Becca's on the bad guy side. She wants Hitler in power.
Right.
She wants them to win World War II. Yeah.
Becca has proof her ancestors responsible.
Ooh.
Provides new motivation for her to find and kill Clemence in order to prevent. And maybe it's not in order to prevent, it's in order to help the Nazis win World War II.
Yep.
So now we're talking about the resolution, the main story plots.
Yeah, so this is kind of where knowing the structure of your story or your series at a high level is going to come in it's going to be very important, because at this point, the resolution of the main story plot and subplots is the resolution of this part of the story. It's not the resolution of this series. So the stopping, complete win, the complete victory over the people who should not win in this situation comes in book 3. It's not here in book 2.
Okay, so maybe it was some
What kind of resolution, anything that so you can restore pieces of the timeline, but then in the next book, because it's time travel, unless you finally stopping the big bad guys comes in book 3, but until they stop them in book 3, they are free to run throughout time and change other things to try and achieve their goals. So what is it that they're
it's going to be the document, right?
Yeah.
Of getting the document back. And so main story plot, like this should be replaced with like, for like, what would you put here if you're like working through the recipe is just like the brackets to know that like, okay.
I would put in there the resolution of the issue around who has the document and what happens to the document. So if it's a document that is the plans for D-Day that the Nazis have gotten a hold of, is it necessary for them to get the document, or is it confirmation that they have the document so the Allies can then change their plans? Because if they change their plans, that document won't matter anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll have an outdated like version 1.0, and now they're going to have plan 2.0
mm-hmm.
for the getting into France and liberating France. So, and this kind of, when we go through this kind of step, it kind of makes me realize that maybe going back once this is all done and refining that plot idea around the document and saying, she's trying to confirm whether or not they have that document. She needs to get a hold of it so she can see if they have it or not. So the Allies know whether or not they have to scrap their plans, because if they're far enough into the planning for D-Day, they don't want to scrap their plans if they don't have to, because that would give the Nazis more leverage and more time. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but as we go through the recipe and you get down toward the bottom, this is why planning is so important, because you can see plot holes before you start writing them. As a book coach, one of the things we look at is that mistakes are made in books, fiction books, particularly in the first 3 to 4 chapters that set the trajectory for the entire story. And if you can resolve those problems early on, you don't have to spend as much time going back and rewriting the whole thing. It's just one section of the book.
Got it.
So kind of planning things out. And there are a lot of, I can be a pantser sometimes, or a intuitive writer, I guess is the term that's in writing circles these days. But kind of using a tool like this as brainstorming is so valuable to show you what might work and what might not.
Yeah. And you give a quick definition of what that is. I think you said pantser or whatever the other word was.
Pantser or plotter.
Plotter, okay.
So there's typically there's a lot of discussion around this. If you're a pantser, you don't outline. You just sit down in front of your computer, with a piece of paper, and you just write and you see what happens. I think the term that's being used these days is intuitive writer as well. And a plotter is somebody who kind of does what we're doing. They sketch out a plan. It may be very high level. It could be really detailed down to every single scene you script out. And even if you have an outline, sometimes those things can change. But that's kind of different camps within the writing world, and people will either align with a pantser or a plotter, or maybe it's kind of a hybrid. I do my own thing, which I think is me most of the time. because before I sit down to write, I kind of sit down and sketch out what I want to happen in what I'm about to write. I review what I wrote yesterday. And then I kind of sit down and work through kind of a general high level overview before I really get into the nitty gritty of writing or using Jasper to kind of generate ideas and working from there.
Yeah, I think if you were to try and take like the totally free flow approach, like with Jasper, like it will go off in all kinds of directions, like and without having an idea of like where do you want it to go. But again, like even with like kind of like the story I'm working on, it's like I like that aspect of it because now I have these ideas of different characters and things that I can add in whenever it does come down to going back and trimming it, but it can go off the deep end real quick as well. And if you're following something that has like a lot of, it's following even like this in like a sequel, right? Book 2, like this might not be the direction you want to go necessarily, right. But you know, I mean, like, cause Trevor's the bad guy, right? And you know, we might want to like edit a little bit of it here, but what would you use? I guess let's finalize this last one and say like we've gone through, you know, spent about what, an hour, little over an hour going through this recipe. And I think we fleshed out a lot of ideas, it seems, and you know, some ways that we could definitely pursue going up to the final image. Beating up Becca because she's helpless on the ground. How much has changed at the beginning? Is now strong, independent, who's taking down her enemies. I don't know if this would be the route to go.
So I think a little bit more context around kind of that showdown or that confrontation. Maybe there's a showdown or a confrontation between Becca, Fagin, Clemence, and Nico, where Clemence is trying to understand or get some idea of what's going on with Fagin. Why did you, I'm just thinking out loud because I know you got 200 characters here, or 200 words. Yeah, see where that goes, because it's really, yeah, Nico's not dying. That ain't happening. He's too cute.
Becca's arrested by the police. Shows the good guys have won and the bad guys have been defeated. Her allies stand triumphant over.
Yeah, this is like ending book 3 maybe, but not book 2. So I think it's more around the emotional context between Fagin trying to explain herself without like giving anything away about her family, and Clemence just doesn't deal with it. So basically I think the final image is Clemence and Becca, or no, Fagin and Becca escaping and maybe stranding Nico and Clemence in 1939.
So I'm doing here, instead of trying to keep it under that 200 characters, is just doing this, and then you're going to just do compose and see what it kind of comes up with. Final image, escaping, because Jasper is still recognizing that this is like what it's building off of. It shows how much has changed, now working together.
Yeah.
Get back to the future.
Yep.
Not a bad final scene.
Yeah, not a bad final scene.
And there we go. 2,000 words later.
Wow.
And that's cool. And so like, just to like recapping it, right? Like we're all the way up back, you know, where we started up here, all literally just based off of this one content brief, right? And so you could modify this content brief for every command. Opening image, Clemence is, you know, trying to pick a lock in a dark alleyway. She's doing nefarious things that are surely illegal. Her and Nico meet again, and she's trying to steal from his family business. The theme of this book is, what are we powerless against fate? And a big question in the hook is like, what's the Nazis' plan and how will Clemence stop them? Kind of move into some of the inciting incidents to prevent the Nazis from doing that. She's tasked with stealing a very important document. So this is where the document comes into place. It was kind of the theme for this whole book. Attempting to steal this document, she's caught in the act. And so then she ends up working for the resistance. And she can't go back. She's working for the resistance now. She's here to go steal this document that's going to change the course of the war. Kind of covered that with the resistance. And then comedy element, Nico decides to pose as a Gestapo officer.
I might keep that. That could be funny.
Okay, you could just keep running this command again and again and again until you find something that clicks. And that's where I found like Jasper doesn't really like get the nuance of comedy, but it will still throw stuff out that can be comical. It's just not gonna like.
Yeah, well, who was it? Was it Sid Caesar who said, dying is easy, comedy is hard? Drama is easy, comedy is hard, something like that. Comedy is very hard. I have a much harder time. Although Jasper has come up with some really kind of hilarious, whether intentional or not, some really hilarious kind of bits for stories.
It's a pretty cool overview. I mean, just in general, at least something to work from now and just kind of have it out of your head and working back through on paper a little bit.
Yeah. It's not going to write the book for you, but it certainly gets you really further down the road. I mean, maybe at some point, I think all of the interviews I see about, AI is going to take over writing books. It's like, you really have to know what you're doing with the AI to put the correct commands in. And a lot of people don't understand that part of the working with a tool like Jasper. And that's, I've learned so much in the last 4 or 5 months that I've had this tool, and it's made a difference in my writing for sure, in terms of generating content that I can then go through and sift out the gold.
Yeah, that's so much of it is just, it's like, I heard someone, because when we were doing, like our book writing course with it, like you're right, there's a lot of parts that go into it. And at the end of the day, like we're mostly using it for nonfiction books and it's following kind of a how-to theme.
Yeah.
So Jasper's pulling from stuff that it already knows there's a set process with it. That's the beauty with like the fiction side, is that the possibilities are endless, but like if you harness Jasper and focus it in the right direction, can generate a lot of really good ideas, help you dig in, brainstorm the plot. And then even if you just know what you want to write about, like we can write out a book blurb and just kind of, whip stuff like this up. Right. And so even if you aren't writing your book, and I guess to kind of like, bring this back full circle, is like this book is not going to write a screenplay that's going to go get pitched to a Hollywood producer necessarily and is going to say, oh, wow, that's an incredible thing that you wrote. And, with AI, but as a starting point to like potentially like build to something like that, right? I mean, what are some examples of how a writer, maybe like yourself or someone else, could take even just the 15 beats from Save the Cat? Like if you had a good idea for a story and you wanted to do something with it, like, is this something you could take to a publisher, to a producer, to somebody to like buy in and fund the project, like with just this, or is there more to it? I'm sure there is more to it, but is there like what would that process even look like if you want to like take this idea and kind of run with it?
I think this is a great tool to jump into the pool and just start swimming. What I found with Jasper is that it really helps cut down the amount of time I spend brainstorming and generating ideas and getting rough drafts put together. The polishing is in the editing. So to answer your question around, is this something I can take to a publisher? That's a little further down the road after you've written a first draft that's solid. And then you go back and you edit. And I'm not sure that you're going to be able to edit in Jasper, although you probably could. kind of try different iterations, but that fine tuning of the work that you did with Jasper as a writing assistant is really where you're going to get to the point, hopefully, where it's sellable either to a movie studio or getting an agent, because they're looking for something polished. And that is a partnership between you and Jasper, and taking what Jasper does and making it your own and polishing it up the best that you can. So start with Jasper, get the first draft done. Never ever submit your first draft. Put it in a drawer, leave it for a little while, come back to it, edit it, and see where you're at.
Well, that's good. And yeah, I mean, just getting the first draft out is like sometimes the hardest part, that most people never get to getting that first draft out in the first place. So any words of like encouragement to people that haven't written a book yet, or like are on the edge of writing something, and they have a story, but they're not quite like there yet?
Yeah. Write and see what happens. Just let the creative juices go. My first book was probably 10 years in the making. And I realized after I wrote the first draft of Thieves, which it wasn't called Thieves originally, it was completely from a different character's perspective. Clemence was the bad guy. And I realized when I got my first draft done that I really kind of liked this bad girl more than I liked my main character. And I tore it down to the studs and rewrote it. And now it's out in the world. And regardless of how many copies it sells, it's still my first book. In fact, holding the copy in my hands was worth every bit of pain. So word of wisdom, just keep writing. Don't let anybody tell you to stop. Don't give up.
Love it. Awesome. Well, that was such a blast on my end, and it's cool to see. I still think we're just at the surface with where this is at, and anyone that's out there that's interested in like giving this recipe a spin, you can find it inside of our AI author cookbook membership, along with dozens and dozens of other recipes. Community members like Sheri here, and others, we're all writers of all types, and whether it's fiction, whether it's nonfiction, whether you're using it to write YouTube scripts, blogs, blurbs for your book, anything in between, really just at the surface of this. And keep in mind that Jasper is just a tool, and it's to help facilitate you getting your words out into the world. It's still on you to get to that point where you do click publish, and we're here to help support you to make that happen. So thank you so much, Sheri.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Absolutely. And again, one last bit, where can people go to find out more about you, reach out and say hey?
Yeah, lynsouth.com, LYN, one N, south like the direction.com.
All right, everyone else here tuning out. See y'all on the other side.